I still remember the night that phone call came in. And even now, I can't decide what hit me first: fear, guilt, or relief. Because when I heard the words, "Your warehouse is on fire," part of me froze, and part of me already knew. Honestly, that's the part I still have trouble living with. Let me go back a bit. At the time, I was running a small distribution business, nothing huge. We supplied packaging materials to local shops, a few regional clients, that kind of thing. For a while, it was stable. Not exciting, not glamorous, just steady. And for me, steady used to feel like enough. Then things started slipping. One client left, then another one delayed payments. Costs went up, storage fees went up, fuel went up. Every month I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I just had to push through one more quarter. I won't lie, I got really good at pretending things were under control. I'd smile in meetings, answer emails like everything was fine, then sit alone in my office staring at numbers that didn't make sense anymore. The warehouse was the biggest weight on me. It was old, expensive to maintain, and half the inventory inside wasn't moving. On paper, it still looked like an asset. In real life, it felt like a hole I kept throwing money into. My wife started asking questions I didn't want to hear. Not accusing, just practical questions. How bad is it? Do we need to cut back? Should we sell something? And I kept brushing her off. I told her I had a plan. Looking back, I think I said that mostly because I needed to hear it myself. Around that time, I started paying attention to the insurance policy in a way I never had before. I knew the coverage, obviously. I was the owner. I had signed all the paperwork. But before that, it was just one of those business documents you file away and forget. Suddenly, I was reading every line. What would be covered, what counted as loss, what the payout limits were. At first, it didn't feel like a plan, that's the truth. It felt more like a thought I kept refusing to finish. The kind of thought that shows up, and you tell yourself, "No, I'm not that kind of person." Then it comes back the next day a little clearer, then again the day after that. I remember walking through the warehouse one evening after everyone had left. The place was quiet except for that old buzzing sound from the overhead lights. I stood there looking at rows of boxes I couldn't sell, shelves I couldn't afford to keep, and I had this ugly, sinking feeling that my whole life was turning into dead stock. And that was the first night I seriously imagined it. Not in some movie scene kind of way, nothing dramatic. Just this cold, practical thought. If the warehouse was gone, the insurance money could clear the debt, maybe even give me room to start over. Maybe I could save the business. Maybe I could save my house. Maybe I could stop waking up at 3 a.m. feeling like my chest was caving in. That's how I justified it to myself. Not greed, survival. Honestly, that lie made everything easier. After that, I started doing small things that didn't seem like much on their own. I moved certain records out of the office, took a few machines home for repairs, delayed restocking. I even started making casual comments to people about the wiring in the building, about how old the place was, how I kept meaning to get it checked. At the time, I told myself I was just being careful, keeping options open. But deep down, I knew I was preparing the story before the fire had even happened. And once I crossed that line in my head, everything after that became disturbingly easy. The fire happened on a Tuesday night. I remember that clearly because Tuesdays were always quiet at the warehouse. No deliveries, no workers staying late. By evening, the building was usually empty. That night, I told my wife I needed to stop by the warehouse to check some paperwork. It wasn't unusual, so she didn't question it. Looking back, I realize how easy it is to hide a lie inside normal routines. When I got there, the parking lot was empty. I unlocked the side door and stepped inside. The place was silent except for the buzzing lights overhead. Rows of boxes sat on the shelves, the same inventory that hadn't moved in months. Honestly, I stood there for a while. Part of me kept thinking I should just leave, that nothing had happened yet. But every time that thought came up, I remembered the debt, the unpaid bills, and the feeling that the business was collapsing around me. So I did what I had already imagined too many times. Once the fire caught the cardboard and packaging materials, it spread quickly. Within minutes, the flames were climbing higher than I expected. I didn't stay long. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. About 20 minutes later, I called emergency services and said I saw smoke coming from the warehouse. By the time I returned, firefighters were already there. Flames were coming through the roof and thick smoke filled the air. I stood there, watching everything burn while telling people I had no idea how it started. At first, things seemed to go the way I planned. Insurance representatives inspected the damage and asked questions about the building. I told them it was probably old wiring. The warehouse was destroyed, and the insurance claim process began. For a few weeks, I actually believed the plan had worked. Then, investigators started asking more questions. They mentioned a security camera that showed my car entering the warehouse parking lot the night of the fire. That was the first moment I realized they knew more than I expected. After that, the investigation grew deeper. They checked phone records, delivery logs, and noticed that some equipment and documents had been removed from the warehouse days before the fire. Little details I thought no one would notice started connecting together. Months passed. The insurance payment was frozen while the investigation continued. The stress became worse than before. I barely slept, and every phone call made my stomach drop. About 6 months later, everything ended. One morning, there was a loud knock on my front door. When I opened it, 2 police officers were standing there. They told me I was under arrest for arson and insurance fraud. My wife stood behind me in the hallway, confused and scared, asking what was happening. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The fire I thought would save my life had actually destroyed it. The business was gone, the insurance money was gone, and the trust my family had in me was gone too. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't understand then. You think one lie will solve a problem, but lies don't stay small. They grow, until eventually they burn down everything you were trying to protect.